What I want to talk a little bit about is the performance transformation we've made and how we've done it, because I fundamentally believe that what we've done on performance management is not just incremental or a bit of an improvement, it is really awesome. And for a company that is based in Scotland and Yorkshire, we don't tend to kind of overstate stuff. So as a bit of background, I am Head of Organisation Development for Clydesdale Yorkshire Bank. We have three brands, so Clydesdale Yorkshire and then our digital brand B. We have about 7,000 employees operating primarily north of England and Scotland. And we came into existence in February of last year, went through an IPO. So we have 180 years of history and we're a startup. We're basically a startup in banking at a time when, like so many industries, we're basically moving from being high street to digital. For most people, the size of the bank branch is the size of the mobile phone screen. So we are kind of going into a market that is transforming utterly and trying to find our identity at that same point. So one of the great things is that has forced us to look at every single thing we do. So in becoming independent, we've had to look at our technology, our product, our risk frameworks, and every single part of people practice. And that's where what I'm going to talk to you in the next short little while is about. So what kind of started us off is that big point is our separation from National Australia Group. So CIPD had been a subsidiary of National Australia Group for well over 30 years. So we were quite literally run from the other side of the world. We had people, as a result, who were used to kind of going through the process, but were, thousands of miles from the strategic decisions about why that mattered. We had people who had a real subsidiary mindset, who weren't used to taking accountability. And that was, for the duration of the career of every single person working in that bank. So what we have had to do is grow up very, very fast. We have had to, in every single role, you have more accountability now than you did 18 months ago. And we've had to hold people to account on that. One of the other things that was really quite helpful for me was the lowest single score in our engagement survey was in relation to performance management. So 49% of our people thought performance management was effective when I joined the company 15 months ago. After telling lots of people that it didn't really work and we needed to do something better, I'd managed to get that down to 37%. So in terms of a burning platform for making things better, I had 63% of people who just wanted change. So that's quite helpful. Where we started off, though, is what was very, very clear was before we could go anywhere near changing performance management, we had to look at mindset. So we had lots of managers who viewed their job as a technical job. Management was kind of off the side of the desk. They'd get around to it. They didn't see management as a core part of their role. There was also an awful lot of, we've tried things, we've proposed things, we got knocked back. And that was essentially because the business was treated as a cash cow by the parent company for decades. So they never got investment. So the belief that we could change things was fairly low at the start. And as the other element was, for lots of our people leaders, they didn't really think about their impact on other people. So what our work on mindset, we started with our top 100 and worked with them on how are they feeling in work? How do those feelings impact the way they think? How does the way they think impact the way they act? How does the way they act impact those around them? And how do they adjust all four of those to have a more positive impact? That was really, really fundamental, because what it got us was those people who make this stuff work, we were getting them engaged and getting essentially kind of getting more fertile ground in order to introduce a new performance approach. Let me talk about the kind of things that we have done. So we do not have individual scorecards at all. Instead, we have team goals. So every team in the group sets together, so people leaders in it, but this is a team discussion, and they agree their 5 or 6 goals that they will deliver as a team aligned to our group strategy. So that's the kind of janitor aligning to put a man on the moon, that kind of old NASA story. That's how we deliver what we do. Every colleague also has 2 personal goals. The reason we have 2 is one comes from the colleague, one comes from the people leader. So you're creating that partnership at the outset. And those 2 personal goals are time-bound. It's 3 months, and they are all linked to our values. So they're behavioural things, and they are about incremental improvement. So what's a couple of things that I will do in the next 3 months to get better? And the way we talk to people about that is if you can make a 1% improvement with each of your personal goals, that's 8% in the course of a year, and we would all take that. That time-bound element makes people focus on it. You can't dawdle when you've only got 3 months like you would with your improvement plan or your PDP or whatever you want to call it. You have to get on and make that improvement. And in order to engage people, we talk to them about things like whether people do Scottish Slimmers and they'll set themselves short-term targets on, in the next month I want to lose 4 pounds or whatever. Or at the other extreme, if people wanted to, say, train for a 10K run, they'll have a goal, they'll have a sort of 3-month training plan in order to get them there. So we'd use stories that relate to people's real life and show them how performance would work with that. So you've got team goals and personal goals. The next really important bit was feedback, and this is where clear review is tremendous. So I don't know about you, but I struggle to think of a time when somebody has said to me, can I give you some feedback? And then what's come next has been good. If people want to say good stuff, they just say it. So firstly, we were trying to make feedback easy. And we also know we have this aversion to telling people things, right? So have you ever had food stuck in your teeth after lunch? And several hours later, you see yourself in a mirror and you see the food in your teeth and you think, why has no one told me that, right? Or on the flip side, have you ever sat having lunch with someone and you can see food stuck in their teeth and you've not mentioned it and you're kind of obsessing about the stuff in this person's teeth? And we don't say that's a piece of feedback that is only good for that individual. They're going to have a better day as a result of you telling them to get the spinach out of their teeth. And we don't do it because it's awkward and we feel uncomfortable. So what we've tried to do in our feedback approach is kind of make it as unthreatening as possible. I guess to Stuart's point, get rid of the fear. And so what we've done with that is we say for our feedback we want 2 sentences. So it's always one thing I like and one suggestion to make it even better. And that's all we ask people for, and do it frequently, as frequently as possible. And then the last piece, we do have we ask people to have check-ins at any frequency they like, but we say they must have quarterly check-ins. And that's a colleague with their boss. And in those check-ins, 2 things are captured. So one is the colleague on track or off track? And this isn't like a 2-point rating scale, it's a hurdle, right? Off track means it's improve or exit. On track is if the colleague's worth the salary we're paying them and they're getting better, they're a good investment, so they're on track. If they are not worth the salary we're paying them and there's no sign of improvement, then we shouldn't be employing them. That's maybe 3 or 4% of people. So what we try and get is at the very start of the conversation, for the vast majority of people, you're on track, let's concentrate on your improvement. So for the personal goals, we talk about pace. And the reason for that is, I think someone talked about it earlier, there's people who go, I just want to come to work and do my job. Well, that's a kind of recipe for becoming obsolete very, very quickly nowadays. So what we say is you have to keep pace with the changes in the organisation. So if you meet your personal goals, you're keeping pace. If you've exceeded those personal goals for the quarter, you're setting pace. And that's really a demonstration of fulfilling potential. And if you don't achieve those personal goals, then you need to build pace. And that's not a bad rating. That is just a measure that in that quarter, you have not achieved the improvements you set out to do. And there could be 101 reasons. Operational stuff's got in the way of it. You set yourself a goal that was too stretching. You tried an experiment that didn't work. So all of those things are perfectly valid. We just want to know so we can see a track record that builds up over time. But it is a very different thing. I've said to people, this isn't a how rating. This isn't like what's and how's. It's kind of like using a thermometer rather than a ruler. We are measuring different things. We're measuring the rate of improvement that someone is making. So it's pretty damn different. There are no year-end reviews. There are no round tables. We do not compare people against each other because we kind of fundamentally believe it's irrelevant. So what matters is, if I'm a good investment and I'm getting better, I'm a good employee for this company. It doesn't matter whether I'm better or worse than the person next to me. That kind of becomes irrelevant. So that's kind of what we're doing. How did we get engagement? Well, what we really started with was we pointed out the nonsense of performance management. And so we're a bank, right? We deal with investments. We spend £260 million a year on paying people. And we had a performance approach that would show us that the performance this year was the same as the performance last year because you had exactly the same distribution curve. So you get no return on £260 million investment. So you kind of point that out to a group of bankers and they kind of start to pay attention. So what we said is very much what we're about is improving the return on that investment. We also talked about first principles. This should be, as Stuart said, about improving people's performance. But what happens so often in performance management is it's driven by focusing on the tiny proportion of people who are poor performers or on determining reward outcomes. And what we showed as well was people perform better when they're motivated. What does performance management do? Well, it tells everybody at the bottom that they're crap, so they're demotivated. Then in every other rating, the people at the top of that think they should be the rating above, so they're demotivated. And then you get to the end of the year and you realize that the performance curve that if you achieve it gives you a lovely reward outcome is slightly skewed anyway, and senior people's even more skewed, so they take up a bigger proportion of the budget. So you've not got the money to pay people that you're going to tell them you're going to pay, so everyone ends up demotivated. So you have this approach that sits there, and we have this kind of pseudo-science, but actually you demotivate far more people than you motivate. So we managed to get the leadership team around, firstly, yeah, we're not getting a return on our investment. This doesn't make sense. When we set scorecards, it takes us months. Then they sit in a drawer and nobody looks at them. Managers are afraid to give feedback because they're worried that when they do calibration, they'll lower the ratings. So they don't want to tell anyone they're good in case later on they have to tell them they're not. Colleagues would save up every thank you note they had over the course of the year and present it as evidence of how wonderful they were in the year-end appraisal. And then managers would pretend they'd read all of that and still tell them the rating that came out of the round table. So we just went through all of these things and just pointing out the nonsense of what we were doing today. So that was the first big point. We talked to basically anyone who would spend the time with us. So my team and I would go and talk to any team that was interested, whether it be a senior leadership team, a group of managers, a group of apprentices, and we just talk to them and listen to them about their issues, talk to them about what we're thinking about, and slowly kind of build momentum. We also realize that this is pretty damn different, and we are so ingrained in old world performance management that people retrofit what you tell them to the old approach. So you have to have about 2 or 3 goes with every person before they get the difference. So we spent loads of time on that. Whenever we got people moaning or grumbling, we went and found them and talked to them and asked them why. It took a load of legwork, but realistically, you can't, not everyone's going to get it at the same pace. And then the very last piece on our training, and Stuart kind of talked about this, we didn't do any systems training. We gave them some guides, but what we concentrated on was experiential training. We described it as it's kind of like a cross between The Apprentice and the Crystal Maze, which started off by freaking everybody out, which was also part of the intention, because we wanted to kind of shock them into knowing they had to do something different, and it worked. The system itself is so simple that it's very, very hard to make a mess of it. Some of our people have given that a damn good try, but in general, it is very, very, very simple. So just to close, the kind of so what, and I think Stuart's touched on this, we have had, across our business, every single person in the group has goals aligned to the group goals within a month of the start of the financial year, and we have never been anywhere near that before. We've been like nowhere close to it. We had, I think it was 11,000 pieces of feedback in the first few weeks, which again, we've never, ever been close to that. And then I go and talk to different business areas, like our complaints area. It is changing the way they are working as a function. So because of what we can do on performance management, they're changing their working practices. And one of the really, really cool things through this system is we can see who's got goals, what kind of goals have they got, who's giving feedback, what values are they giving feedback about, what areas aren't giving feedback, what senior leaders are not creating an environment where feedback is happening, who's asking for it, who isn't asking for it. And that allows us to go and find all the odd anomalies and go and have conversations with people that helps them kind of make a change.